Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, let's learn, shall we? What are the UK's weirdest political traditions? My name's Connor. If you're new, the original link to the video top of the description. Let's go.
This video is brought to you by Nebula. The UK is a pretty weird place. You need a license to watch TV, the monarch owns all the swans, there's a place called Barton in the Beans, and this guy runs an online news network. This weirdness, though, extends also to our political system, with a number of quirks from hundreds of years ago persisting to this very day. So in this
British laws, like the weird British laws videos I've watched, you suspiciously carrying a salmon, somehow illegal. Or I guess they don't enforce it, but I want to know where that came from. There had to have been something involving a salmon being carried that made that law. Or like wearing a suit of armor in Parliament, a little easier to see how that could be a thing back in the day. All right, go. Sorry.
This video, we're going to have a look through a few of these, explaining how they came about and how they still function today.
Okay.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Much of the weirdness in our political traditions comes from the simple fact that our system is truly just very, very old. Our political system has developed slowly since around the 13th century, when barons and knights advised the monarch to the system that we know today. With this, practices and
Magna
traditions
Carta?
developed, and while some of the more important ones have been modernised to work in the 21st century, some have been kept as is. And to be fair, it's easy to understand why. If these traditions and practices aren't too important, then the weirdness of them gives the Westminster system a bit of charm.
Order. Love that guy.
While also reflecting its long history. So let's get into some of the weird political traditions an MP might come across on a typical day in Parliament. Now, starting the day, an MP might decide to go to the cloakroom. It's the UK after all, and the vast likelihood is that it's been raining. Upon hanging up their coat, they might notice a small ribbon. Now, this isn't purely decorative. It's actually there for an MP to hang their swords up. After all, it's well known that MPs aren't allowed to bring their swords into the House of Commons. There's even a rumour that the lines that MPs must stand behind when debating the House of Commons chamber are deliberately designed to be two sword lengths apart, in order to prevent particularly aggressive parliamentarians from resorting to duelling.
Was it common for representatives or anyone walking around with swords at one time? I'm thinking of like samurais in the street. I'd expect some, police type people having them, but
However, some actually think this theory is unlikely because, as we stated earlier, swords are banned and have been in the House of Commons for centuries. Anyway, once the business of swords is dealt with, an MP might decide that the next best thing to do is source some snuff. As most of our viewers were born in either the 20th or 21st century and not the 18th or 19th, it's likely that many of you don't actually know what snuff is. Effectively, it's a form of...
okay. I was gonna say that. It's not great. I guess it's better than I've tried, the packing a lip, as you'd say, like in college. Never really pleasant.
tobacco that's snorted rather than smoked.
Snus?
This was introduced in Parliament in 1694, when smoking was banned in the Commons. As such, a doorkeeper ensures that the so-called parliamentary snuff box is always stocked with snuff from a local tobacconist. The current box was
Even if they sneak it in, you just see one guy like, oh.
created in 1943 from a door frame that was blown apart by a German bomb, and has had inscribed on the lid all of the principal doorkeepers since its creation. However, despite its fancy design, if our hypothetical MP were to take up their entitlement to free snuff, this would make them the first MP to do so in decades. A Freedom of Information request from 2010 found that the last time an MP used the box was all the way back in 1989. So perhaps our MP will give snuff a miss, and instead make their way to the green benches so that they can start doing the work of representing the constituents that elected them. Now, if they want to guarantee themselves a space on the famous green benches that day, then they'll need to reserve a seat, because despite there being 650 elected MPs, the benches can actually only seat 427 of them. This design, along with the fact that the benches are designed to be facing each other, deliberately makes the chamber seem more full, more heated, and more adversarial. There was a moment when this could have been changed, though. As we mentioned more offhandedly than we probably should have earlier, the House of Commons was hit by a German bomb during the Second World War, and was set to be rebuilt. The then Prime Minister Winston Churchill had the option to change the design of the chamber and make it less adversarial, perhaps by making it bigger and opting for a semicircular design, something that parliaments around the world were adopting at the time. He decided not to, and rebuilt it pretty much as it used to be.
Did I say US Parliament? Senate?
So MPs
House.
still have to cram into the chamber. But how would our MP reserve their seat? Well, they do this by attending morning prayers and filling out a prayer card. This is one of the only ways to reserve a seat, and can be important on days when high-profile debates are scheduled. Regardless, assuming that our MP does get a seat booked, they may go off to their parliamentary office to get some constituency work done while they wait for their debate. Their office may be located in the Palace of Westminster or the adjacent Portcullis House, which is attached to the palace via an underground tunnel that goes under the road. If this is the case, then our MP needs to be informed of any votes happening in the chamber, so that they can rush back in time for their vote to be counted. Lucky for them, around the whole parliamentary estate, bells and TVs are installed that light up and inform members that their presence is required in the chamber. These bells were even installed in popular pubs.
Sorry, it made me. I was watching Lord of the Rings yesterday, and it made me think of the lights, and then along the mountains, then the other guy lights the fire, and so on. Such as the Red Lion
in the chamber. These bells were even installed
Beacons
in popular pubs, such as the Red Lion around Westminster, just in case MPs had slunk off for a cheeky mid-afternoon pint. Many of these now, though, don't work. So our MP has at least some reminders of votes, but it's worth remembering that these votes only happen when Parliament is in session. Parliament often closes for a number of weeks through the year, with the recess dates aligning roughly with school holidays. It's also closed, though, for the period of prorogation, which is officially the period between the end of a parliamentary session and the King's Speech, which officially starts the next parliamentary session. Now, the King's Speech is a pretty unique event. Essentially, the monarch sits in the House of Lords and reads a speech written by the government, announcing their policies for the next session. This is one of the only situations where MPs are allowed to sit in the House of Lords, but can only do so after being invited. This is when one of the weirdest parts of the day happens. In essence, a person with the title of Black Rod, who is responsible for controlling access to the House of Lords, goes to the House of Commons chamber to summon MPs for the speech. As they get to the door is deliberately slammed in their face, which is done to symbolise the Commons' independence.
I love this stuff. It's little stuff like this that might seem unnecessary to some, that all of the symbolism behind it, and just the cool outfits. Some of them look a little goofy, but in a good way. And I love that. Tradition, amazing.
As with many things listed in this video, it probably isn't essential to the day-to-day functioning of Parliament, but it has become an iconic quirk in the British political system. But what do you think? Are these the weirdest political processes and traditions? Have we missed anything big? Let us know in the comments below. That's not the end of this story either. So if you want to dive deeper into this and other stories, we have an exciting announcement. That's because it was revealed in Variety, no less, that we're building a new product with our partners at Nebula called Nebula News. Let me explain this exciting announcement.
I'm going to play through this, guys, at least, most of it, or if there are any promo codes or anything. So if it interests you, make sure to use them. Let's go.
In an
Thanks for
increasingly
watching.
polarized and confusing world, it's hard to find news that matters and that you can trust. So every day, the TLDR team curates a selection of videos that matter most in the world right now, handpicking a feed of content which should keep you up to date with everything you need. That means no more overwhelming feeds of news coverage, and instead just the stories that matter most. Videos produced by the brilliant creators on Nebula and curated by the TLDR team.
Guys, if this interests you, just make sure to use promo codes and anything they have, all right, to make sure it's their content, sponsors their stuff. So, love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below, answers to any of the questions I had, traditions they didn't mention that you thought of. Anyway, see you guys next time. Bye.